Hey everyone, Carrie Beck here with Homeschool Coffee Break, where we help you stop the overwhelm so you can actually have a coffee break during the middle of your homeschool. And guess what? My friend Amber is here. She's got so many ideas on planning and helping you stay organized so that you really can take that coffee break, or she's taking right now a tea break, I think. So, Amber, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, Carrie, thanks so much for having me.
We're going to dive quickly into this. For those of y'all that have been around me for a while, you know that February is sort of our month of life skills and leadership because we have a summit at the end of February. And Amber's one of our speakers. She also is one of our homeschool superheroes. So she has a wealth of information. We're going to just take a little glimpse at some ideas on how you can plan and still have independent learners and know that they are doing what they need to do to finish school. Because let's face it, if we raise leaders who can't learn independently, we just raised a follower instead of a leader. And so we're going to sort of talk about that. And I know you're going to get some great practical tips as well. Before we dive into the topic, Amber, could you just tell people a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so I am a homeschooling mom of 10, and we have been homeschooling for 20 years. So my oldest is 24, and then we have a range all the way down to a 12-year-old. So when people ask me what age my students are, I just tell them I have each. So currently we have a little bit less. So now we've got a sixth, seventh, ninth grader and a senior this year as well. So we're kind of on the tail end of our homeschool experience. And it's been very interesting because this year has been one of those years that I'm seeing the fruit of what I'm sharing about of creating independent learners because it has been very strange to be so hands off and have my kids kind of taking over the reins of doing their schoolwork and checking in with them. And I've always had littler ones to work with on my own. And this year I just have this group. So it's been an interesting season of independence for my school class and for myself as well. So yeah, I'm starting to see the fruit of the things we've been practicing for 20 years time.
Yeah, and if you have a lot of kids, did y'all hear that? 10 kids, and she's got them to the point that they are not that they're like never talk to her about her schoolwork, but that they can learn independently. And now she has some more independence because I know she is working hard at helping homeschool moms. And I just love the way that you serve the homeschool community and just really want to pour into them. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. Before we do this, can you tell people, I don't know if you'll know what I'm talking about, the name of your blog or your website or whatever that relates to your 10 kids?
For sure. My blog is called 200 Fingers and Toes because I literally have 200 fingers and toes that we were raising during that time. So when I shared my story with people, people always remembered that I was the lady with 10 kids. And so when I was thinking about a blog name, I just thought that the 200 Fingers and Toes was something people could definitely remember and come back to over and over again. So, yep, 200fingersandtoes.com is where I blog regularly.
I just love that name. And it really does stick with you because the first time I heard her, I was like, 200 fingers and toes. And then I heard her story and then I put it all together. So y'all are going to
Yeah.
learn a lot. If Amber can do this with 10 kids, you can do it with one, two, five, 10 yourself.
Yes.
So I do know that she has transitioned from being a full-time stay-at-home mom to working outside of the home. So tell us a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, actually, Carrie, that's one of the reasons that I started sharing about this process of raising your children to be independent learners. For one, I did have the opportunity to begin working outside of the home. And so I am working on a truck route 2 days a week. And then my husband and I flip days during the school year. So that just led to, first of all, me thinking we had been homeschooling for 10 years with that group. And I thought, like, this should be a pretty natural transition. This should be pretty turnkey. Like we already have routines, we have pretty good systems. So I started working, and it did not turn out like I thought it was going to turn out. The first 6 months were really frustrating and really difficult, and the things I thought we had in place weren't enough. And so I had to do some real reevaluating at that 6 month point and just create some new tools to help us begin to create really true accountability for our students, set some real check-in times so that we had an exit plan for the end of the school day and be really, really clear about instructions. We set meeting times. And so we just created some tools that would help build accountability for my kids so that when I have an expectation, they know A, how to execute it, and B, when it is completed.
I love that too because you used a word. I think sometimes moms think their kids can read their brain, and they're sort of like, well, of course you should be doing that. And they've never told their kids what they're expecting of them. And so I think it is really important that we are very clear. I mean, even a 7-year-old needs to know what they expect, what you expect of them, because we're thinking one thing and they're thinking, let's get this finished line, go outside and play soccer or whatever, you know? So, well,
Yep.
it didn't.
And we had it.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say we had a really good routine, but I was leading that routine on a daily basis. And so that transition of taking me out was just a little bit more intentional. So we had to kind of add some tools to help bridge the gaps when I wasn't there.
That's so good. So, okay, so when you realized things weren't working very well, what was it that sort of helped you get back on track? We've mentioned some expectations. What other type of things did you use or do?
Well, I had to go back. My number one tool that is a really great help to me is my mom binder. And I just keep a notebook that has lots of information, lots of references and tools, notes about my students. And so I just had to add to the tool set in my homeschool mom binder. So one of the things I added was just accountability pages. So that was going to be a list of the expectations daily. So not everything for the week, but like in one day school, we just created a really simple checkoff list. These are all the items that you need to do during the school day. So if that's spelling, reading, language arts, math, just a simple checkoff list so that we could minimize the question, what do I do next? And I don't, if they ask me that question, I say, well, did you look at your list? What is next on your list? Have you checked off the things? What's not checked off? That's what you should do next. And so creating a routine of establishing a different place to go to than me to find the answers for what to do today. So that checkoff list was really helpful. Then we have a clear weekly schedule. So they know what's expected of them to do each day. If that's just writing math lesson one, lesson two, lesson three, lesson four, but just a game plan of the week that's in a binder where they can go to it and see. And that way they know what's expected on a daily basis. So they can use that checkoff list for daily work, but then they can go to that binder and see from day to day what needs to be done. And that really helps take me out of the loop so that no one has to ask me what to do. And then, of course, we had to develop that habit of sending them to those tools and resources to be, just proactive about checking to see where they need to be in their work too.
I love that. I used checklists for my own children. And even if you're not leaving the house to work outside the house, this is something you should be doing because your kids need to be independent.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to share a teeny tiny quick story. My kids, especially Gentry, one time said, Mom, thank you so much for what you did, especially in high school, which is when, I mean, they've been doing this for a while, but it was because they had learned time management and they sort of, now she didn't have mom making that list in high school and college, then she's making that list because she said, none of my friends knew what to do. And, so this is super important. And your kids may not like it right now, but they're going to like it. They're going to appreciate it later on.
Yeah,
So,
no, and I have seen the same thing true in our household. When we had a full school, so we had a K through 12 school, kindergarten through 12th grade. We didn't have a sixth grader and we didn't have a ninth grader. So we had every grade. Um, in that year, I only taught two classes. So my younger kids were in one class, the middle group was one class, and then my high schoolers were independent. So this is a pattern that we have worked on in our homeschool. Usually by junior high is when we start making that transition to them looking at the schedule and then coming to me and checking to see what they need. Or instead of me presenting the information, they're going there, following through with what to do, and then asking me questions. And we do create some regular check-ins. So I'm not throwing them a schedule and saying, hey, you're on your own, kid. Because I feel like this is a really important talk because I keep seeing this question of like, what curriculum can I do where my child can just do it on their own? And I will tell you, your new full-time job is homeschooling. Like if you're homeschooling, it is your full-time job. And even though I have a part-time job, which is close to full-time hours, I still have to put the time and dedication into making sure my students have the stuff they need to do well in what I'm asking them to do. And so I don't think you can ever be hands-off as a homeschooling parent. And I don't want to give the illusion that that's a possibility because like our kids deserve our support and they deserve to know that they can count on us to help answer their questions and help them find what they need. But if we employ this direction of making them self-motivated and helping them be independent learners, then we have college-ready kids. And my older two, very successful college students because they took the tools we learned in high school years of homeschooling and they took those to college and did excellent work.
Yeah, that's the same story. I mean, you and I have so similar stories. And when you said junior high, I thought that is so interesting because by the end of junior high, when they got into ninth grade, they started, I wasn't telling them, no, we sat down and worked together each Monday, but they would come up with what they were going to do that week. They've been following that daily schedule and weekly plan. I mean, it didn't look exactly like yours, but it's a similar idea. And
Yeah.
so, you do need your kids to be independent. Otherwise, they follow mom and they just wait for mom to tell them exactly
Yeah.
what to do. And then when they go to college or they go get a job, they don't really know how to think or anything. So I just love this because I'm like,
Yeah.
yay, someone else. So thank
Yeah. And I
you.
think,
And I get,
Carrie, oh, go ahead. I was going to say, I think the
no,
second most important component is then creating accountability. So we have the checkoff list, we have the schedule, we give really clear expectations. We typically have like a Monday or a Tuesday meeting where we sit down and go over work that's been done, work that's coming up. We go over instructions. So everybody's really clear about what they're going to be doing for the week. But then also in relationship to this, when the kids weren't doing their work when I first started working, I'm like, we also need to create some really clear accountability and what happens when work isn't done. And that's also a question I see a lot. And so we created really clear checkoff guides of like if everything's not done by 3 o'clock on Friday and turned in at X location. Like you have to be that clear because your children will be like, oh no, my Greek report, I handed it to you. And I'm like, no, no, no. If it's not in the box, it just doesn't
yeah,
count. So it has to go in this specific location because I just can't chase everything down on Friday. But no activities if everything's not done and completed. And I went from 6 months of frustration to two missed high school football games. And I felt really bad for them. And I just was really clear. I'm like, hey, we set examples. I can help you. You come to me on Thursday. If you're behind, we can talk about it. But on Friday at 3, if you're not ready for checkout, then you are not available for weekend plans. And that's just the rules. And because I was steadfast and held to my guns, and I was very compassionate, I'm like, we can play games. I'll hang out with you this weekend. I wasn't even mad. I'm like, I'm not mad. Like, you just didn't meet your deadline. It happens. If I work, sometimes I don't meet a deadline. It happens. But let's do better next week. What were the things that made you not meet your deadlines? Where were you hung up? Where are you stuck? And then let's make sure we don't do that next week. 2 weeks of missed football games and people were turning in work with like ready to go. So if we create accountability and then we stand by our word and we can do that cheerfully. We don't have to be mean. We don't have to be mad. You know what? I hung out and did game night. Like it's fine. We have Friday night together instead of a football game. No big deal. But if they wanted to do something, they knew they had to be motivated to get their work done. And that just helped them buy in and commit to completing their assignments because they knew if they did their assignments, then they could be free to do activities they wanted to do as well.
that is so good because that was one of my questions. How do you keep from getting behind? So if I'm hearing you correctly, you've got first, we're going to set the expectations and clearly communicate them. You're talking about accountability. And yeah, there are consequences in my job. If I don't get something done, there is a consequence. And as moms, a lot of times moms, let's be honest, we don't want them to hurt. But they need to have that. And that was one of my struggles, cutting those little apron strings. And then the fact that you cannot be 100% off. You can't just put someone, I mean, if you're going to be 100% off, just send them to school or go do something else. If you're homeschooling, you really do need to focus on them. Does that sort of sound, am I sort of summarizing that well?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's really clear. And then coming alongside them, like instead of being frustrated or mad that they didn't complete work, really trying to get a handle on what's happening. So, like, let's go back over the checklist. Are we not understanding something? Let's go back over the assignment. And again, I go back to you have to be really clear. So, what is the objective of the assignment? What do you want? And then express that to your students really clearly so that they know what you're asking, so that you're not wasting a lot of time for them as well, because it's frustrating when they're working and trying to get things done on a schedule. If we're more clear with our expectations, then they know exactly what they need to do for you to be satisfied. And we all want to be happy. So I think if we can help our kids make us happy, then it just leads to a more productive day and a better homeschool. And if you're not doing your part, then you have to own that as well and step back. I mean, this was me at that 6 month mark. I was not enjoying homeschooling. I was really frustrated and thought maybe I made a mistake picking up this job. Maybe we weren't going to be able to do that. But by just making some small changes, creating accountability, creating clear expectations, we were able to make that homeschool work and be really successful.
That's so cool. You mentioned your mom binder. I know that's one of your tools that sort of helped you stay
Mhm.
focused. Is there anything else that you would want to share about that mom binder that you think might um, help
Yeah.
our listeners?
For sure. My mom binder holds a lot of papers. I have created an accountability bundle, but really they were notebook pages that I used just throughout our homeschooling life. So over those 20 years, it was just pieces of paper that I kept in the front of the binder that was maybe like, hey, I see that so and so is struggling in X, and I'm just going to write that down. Or keep a running list of like, hey, interests. Like this child seems really interested in Greek mythology. We have a house that was obsessed with Greek mythology. And so maybe I'm going to find some studies. We went on to study Greek because this interest. So it gives you a chance to kind of dive down. So if you have a place that you just have a binder where you keep information that's pertinent to each one of your students and also some records of like maybe what's going on. I actually had a relationship accountability page. I had a child who she and I just butted heads like crazy. And sometimes I would send her to her room and my husband would come home and say, like, what is she in her room for? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, I can't even remember. There have been so many things today. And homeschooling a bunch of kids and trying to keep my responsibilities. So I started this just relationship page to write down, like, what were the conflicts that were happening on a regular basis and kind of see some root causes of like what was happening in my relationship with that child, what was happening in her relationships with the others in the house. Was there like a steady, oh, maybe a factor between the conflicts that we were having? So pages like that, where you're like, I'm trying to build some answers and give myself some tools to go back and reflect on my homeschool day and do better. Like, this is my full-time job and I want to be the best I can be. So if you were an executive, you would study to be better. And so that's most of the time why I do these talks is because I have invested 20 years and 10 kids. I have like 5 times the normal person's experience in homeschooling just by exponential children. But I share these talks because I want to shorten your timeline of learning. I want to shorten that window of frustration and get people to success. And so that mom binder, even though I have an official bundle that has some things that I've used, you can just start by keeping a page about your student and just notes about them and reflections on what they're doing, maybe some trouble spots, and just be intentional about your time in the morning and just make some notes about what's going on so that you can be proactive, maybe look for tools that they need. But that's really what I've been, is just a studier of my family, a studier of child development, a study of education. Like I'm invested in homeschooling because I want my kids to be really successful and I want to give them my very best as well. And so I just want to encourage parents, like, yes, there are days when it is difficult, and there are days when it doesn't seem like the kids are getting it, but keep investing and keep pushing forward and keep developing your skills and your kids' skills. Because literally, I had a son who would not write in high school. Every writing assignment was just, I had to beg him. It was awful. And now he's in law school and he's writing so many papers. And he said all the school skills that he learned in homeschooling have really helped him be
Mm.
successful at what he does. And so, it took till 23, 24 for him to say, like, hey, thanks for making me read 1,000 books. Thanks for making me write papers on specific types of styles because I see I'm way ahead of my classmates. And I'm grateful now that I've equipped him with the tools he needed to be successful in the future. And that's what I want to do, even with these younger kids now. I want to equip them with the tools that they need so that they can go on any direction they want from their homeschool time.
That is so good. And if y'all are listening, just think about this. If your kids are elementary age, you could just like get rid of all our mistakes and just listen to Amber and do what she says. And then you could avoid, all that hassle. And there's also hope. If your kids
Yeah.
keep complaining, just remember, like we all are saying, when they turn 20, sooner or later, they're going to turn around and just go, thank you, mom. They really will. And yet, I know some moms feel like they are so far off track, so far gone. So let's close with this and like how if they're feeling like they're not even going to be able to finish this school year, what encouragement or what ideas do you have to share with them?
Yeah, you know what? First of all, I can sympathize. I'm still there. So even though, like, I'm talking about this, I'm teaching about this, I still have weeks we've got to go back to the schedule. I still open up the science book if I've laxed for 2 weeks and I'll see the module's not done. So consistency is just going to be a factor forever. Like, do not give up because you can do better next week. And so know that this is just part of the whole process. It's going to be developing this character that's a deeper level with your students, and really this core values of honoring their time and honoring the things I've asked is all relational and things that we're growing into, and that's going to take that whole time of them raising to adulthood. And so, but also I see it's really important to get the tools that you can to help you be successful. I know I am a huge listener of podcasts. I love like Carrie's podcast. Like I'm always picking up podcasts that just teach me some tips. And then I'm always listening to summits. So I am a part of Carrie's summits because first I listened. And even as a speaker, like I listen to more workshops than I produce because I learn something every year. And I'm touched to tears sometimes because I'm just encouraged that there are other parents out there working really hard and overcoming challenges and giving us tools to be prepared and do better. And so even at the 20-year mark, I'm still looking for tools to help me do a good job. And I don't think we ever reach a place where we're done until all of our kids are out of school. And so if you are at a place where you're like, I don't think we're going to get this, step back, reevaluate, apply maybe some of the tools that we've talked about. And then, you know what, invest in yourself. So I know Carrie has a course. I know I have a course that's just a 30 days to homeschool reset. And it's just a quick, like a workshop like this. It's just 4 weeks of kind of just getting back on track. So if you're like, you know what, I'm so far off track, I don't even want to restart. Like then do something like that and do a 30-day course where just walk through 1 week at a time and get these things back in order and learn how to set accountability markers for your students. And some people need that. I know my mom is not an organizer. Like when we talk about cleaning, she has a tiny house, and when she talks about like organizing and storage, she's like, I'm not a visionary. I don't get it. And so sometimes we need somebody to come along who can see the big picture better than we can. And they can look and say, like, here's how everything can fit. I've got some tools that will help you. And that's a great thing. And I think we're in the perfect day and age to reach out to people and say, like, I'm ready to learn and give me some tools.
And there is so much out there. And I would let me just tell you that I trust what Amber teaches, and that 30-day to homeschool reset would be awesome. I'm gonna throw one little idea. If you're just like pulling your hair out and you're not, I would say take like 1 week off of homeschool and just stop. Or if you can't do the whole week, take 3 days off. Your kids are going to be in shock that you did that. But sometimes we just need some time to get our minds focused. And as you're listening to this, if you listen as it's published, I mean, we're coming to the home stretch of this school year. And so a lot of moms are getting to that burned out point. So I would really encourage you to go and look at Amber's course and see what it has to offer. Could you tell people if they want to contact you, where they could contact you and any other resources that might be able to help them?
For sure. Well, I am at 200fingersandtoes.com on all social media, so you can find me there. I'm going to be speaking at the Life Skills Leadership Summit, and I'm going to be talking about raising resilient teens and shaping their attitude toward failure. And then I'm also going to be talking more about raising independent learners. And so, so those are, I think, two things that I'm really passionate about helping parents discover. And then I have a podcast that's the In Due Season Homeschool Podcast, where we just help people get a good start to their homeschool year. So yeah, 200 Fingers and Toes is the best place to find me. And from there, tons. I've probably got over 300 blog posts and articles. So you can do a deep dive and learn everything that I'm talking about here.
That is so good. And wherever you're listening to this, just look below or above or wherever in the description, and we will have links to Amber so you can reach out to her as well. So thank you so much. This is awesome. I love visiting with people and getting to know, and then I just find more new connections. Before we close, is there anything you would like to just share with our moms as we get ready to leave?
Yeah, you know what? As I'm doing this talk, I just keep coming back to like relationship is the most important thing. And so if we're doing anything that's putting relationship on the back burner, then I agree with you. Stop. Stop and like do a STEM week. Stop and do a puzzle day. Like just try to find ways to reconnect with your kids as well. Because if you leave homeschooling without relationships, you've missed the single greatest opportunity homeschooling gives you. And it's not worth missing the most important thing.
That is so good. So, well, thank you, Amber, for being with us. I really appreciate it. And y'all go take a look at everything she has to offer. So, I
Always a pleasure, Carrie. Thank you so much.
oh yes. Well, I am Carrie Beck with Homeschool Coffee Break, and we will talk to you next time.